If this image of ourselves standing at the middle of a brightly lit space, or possibly stepping into a brightly lit space, can be used as an image schema, which I think it can, then I would suggest what we're looking at there is a kind of metaphor for knowledge. There's a very common conceptual metaphor to do with knowledge. Something like knowing is sensing, and more often than not, that sensing is seeing, so we get knowing is seeing. And so there's already a feeling within that knowledge and the process of knowledge acquisition involves a space in which knowledge exists, either as an action or as an object, and the properties of that space and the properties of being in that space together construct the schema from which metaphorical understanding and metaphorical structuring of knowing and knowledge can be drawn. I've already spoken about that before, but just one or two entailments that immediately spring to mind. When I'm standing in the middle of this space, I'm actually standing on the salt line right now. It's an old disused railway line, and this particular stretch is raised. It's an embankment, probably about 20 feet higher than the level of the fields round about through which the old railway line used to travel. And because it's 15 feet up, I can see further than certainly a lot further actually than I would be able to if I was standing in the field down there. So I'm gaining more knowledge, more information. No, let me get the information first before I try and map it. I can see more things. I can visualize a greater extent. The horizon that I'm looking towards is further away. There are more small artifacts, trees, houses and so on that horizon than there appear to be when I'm standing lower down on the field. I can also take in a wider perspective because of this height. I can see more than other people could. There was a guy walking his dog in this field who said to me a few minutes ago, and if he was to look in the same direction as I'm now looking, he would be able to see less. So, if that's an aspect of this experience, then perhaps that's an aspect which can map across as an entailment onto the schema to do with knowing is sensing, particularly knowing is sensing within a brightly lit space as this is. I'm reminded here of the supposed saying by Isaac Newton, which is to do with if I have seen further than other men, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants, something like that. But what he's indicating there is that knowledge acquisition and enhanced knowledge acquisition maps from a sense of being higher up, because when we're higher up we can see further. When we see further we can get a bigger picture, more experience is available to us, more information is available to us, and we can see beyond the horizon that was previously available. We can see knowledge objects, if you like, which lie beyond the reach of a sea level vision, if you like. So there seems to be a logistical mapping there. It seems like a valid entailment. Possibly one of the features that corresponds to that, or which adds to that, is that there's another metaphor which I think probably plays along with it. It's not a direct aspect of this, but I think it probably forms part of it, which is to do with height. We assume height. We map height and we assume a metaphorical relationship between elevation and value. So we tend to assume things that are higher are, I can't even say this without using the metaphor, are of higher value. I know Lakoff and Johnson wrote about this quite a bit, and I think I could derive it from the accumulation of something if you're collecting something. They're talking about food resources, for example, or firewood. the more you have, the higher the pile is. So from that again, completely embodied experience, we get the sense that higher is better, and we use that in terms like high performance or higher power, all those kind of terms. When we're trying to assign something a greater value, we use height metaphors. So again, I think that in terms of this schema that I'm looking at right now, which is this knowing is sensing, taking its logic from standing in a brightly lit space and looking out, then to see further than other men, as Newton puts it, because you're standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't simply useful, it's also highly valued in and of itself. And that value obviously comes from the results of that in a completely pragmatic way, but also it has a metaphorical resonance, because to be higher is to be of greater value.